Very much, Karen. Our next question has been asked by Elise St Hill, who's head of operations at Possible, and her question asks, how do we ensure staff have the freedom of hybrid working without it damaging team cohesion, culture, productivity, etc.? How do we promote these things to staff as beneficial and worth protecting when they are used to and prefer working remotely now? And I think that's a brilliant question.
Yeah, and it's probably the main question that we're all going to be facing, I would imagine, if not already, certainly in the coming months. And there's quite a number of clients that we've already started to work with on that. And I think the first point of call is to act proactively. So rather than waiting for these requests to come in, that you act now and look at what your landscape looks like. So certainly with the clients that we've been working with so far, we've kind of helped them move forward in terms of what that world of work looks like in the future. And we've approached that with our clients in a particular way where we've looked at 4 key activities. And the first thing that I would suggest that you do is to review your current population and categorise the team members that you currently have. And typically that's going to be in 4 areas. So you'll have your site-based employees, those where they have to come to site, you know, particularly in manufacturing, retail, customer-facing roles, hospitality. You've got your virtual staff, so traditionally that would be your sales team that might be out on the road. It might be your regional managers who, again, are constantly out on the road and visiting different sites. You've then got your home workers, so people who work from home at home all the time. And then these hybrid workers, where they might do a mix of home working and site-based activities. And whilst we have had home working and hybrid roles for a long time, the volume of employees that are going to fall into those categories moving forward are likely to be significantly higher. So I really would recommend that you look at your population in the first instance and identify those roles where things like home working and hybrid working can be adopted if that's an approach that you want to take. Once you've looked at that and looked at what your population looks like, you can then look at the company policies that you've got in place. And again, many organisations will already have home working policies in place. So it might be a case of simply expanding on those. But what we would suggest in terms of what's included in that policy is a number of items. Now, first of all, obviously, I'd suggest that we highlight these categories of workers. So the site-based, virtual, home workers and hybrid. So that's the first thing that your policy will set out. You can then look at things like what equipment the company is going to provide, any insurance implications that will be affected as a result of that. And importantly, when you're looking at these policies, you can also look at the health and safety requirements, particularly around risk assessments and DSE. And I think the key to remember here is that even where people are working at home or whether they're on the road, the responsibility for their health and safety still lies with the organisation. So it's crucial that we set out what the company is going to do in those circumstances. The other area, and this is the one where managers are always a little bit nervous, the expectations in terms of working time and individuals giving their full time and attention to work. Again, we can set out clearly in that policy what it looks like. And then one other aspect that I'd suggest that individuals look at is data protection, because again, those principles around the data protection legislation are absolutely still in place even when individuals are working at home, and probably even more difficult to maintain. So looking at the company data that individuals have, particularly if the individual has access to personal data, how's that going to be stored if they're working from home? Is it going to be secure? Will it be accessible to the family or other people that might visit the premises? And then the last 2 areas really is, one is the company's right to access premises. So obviously you want to be able to make sure that individuals are complying, particularly with those issues around confidentiality. So the company's right to access. And then finally, the importance to ensure that the individual agrees to providing some level of flexibility. So whilst in the main they might be agreeing to home working or hybrid working, there's got to be some flexibility around arranging cover for the office, so coming into the site on more frequently, might be to attend training, meetings, that team interaction that's also important. So your policy will set out all of those aspects, and you can make it really clear in terms of what you're going to deliver as a business and what your expectations are going to be in return. So that's the point number 2. Point number 3 then would obviously to be looking at varying individuals' terms of employment, because obviously we're looking at a considerable change here to the work location. So we'll need to ensure that that's confirmed in writing. So once we've got to the stage where we're agreeing any changes, make sure that that's confirmed in writing to the individual. And as we've mentioned before, we can do that on either a trial basis or a permanent arrangement. And certainly with a lot of these things, we've had this process thrust upon us really in these emergency circumstances, but moving forward it might be actually we do want to look at doing that on a trial basis to look at that broader scope of how things are going to work in the future. And then finally, and this probably answers the question, so I've taken a long road to get to the actual answer of the question. In terms of obviously what you can do to support your employees and managers when they're changing the way in which they're working, we would suggest really providing some specific guidance. That might be a training session, it might be a briefing document, it might just be some ongoing guidance that you provide for both your employees and for your managers. And so for your employees, that might include things around how to stay motivated, how to organise their workload, being free from distractions, how to effectively communicate with the managers, but importantly, how they're going to interact with their colleagues if they're working from home or on that hybrid basis where they may not cross over with their colleagues in the office. But then also very importantly, it's a topic that's in the news a lot these days, is tips on mental health and well-being. And I think you mentioned yourself earlier, Tom, about being isolated when people are working from home, and that really is a serious issue to be dealt with. So again, providing some help and guidance on how to remain mentally healthy and well whilst people are working from home. And then the managers. So the managers for me are the absolute crucial linchpin of making this work effectively. And for me, I think managers are probably in the prime spot that they really do need to develop a new set of skills in how they oversee their teams and how they support their teams. And so for them, the guidance is absolutely crucial. And again, for me, it's going to focus on areas like effective and regular communication, how they maintain and establish effective team interactions, how they measure and reward good performance, how they support areas of development and underperformance, and what to do if they have concerns about employees. And for me, I think the managers are probably in the most difficult position because it's a completely new way of working and overseeing their team. So they will certainly need some support, some guidance, some training during that period. And as we say, this new way of working, it's kind of been landed on everybody's doorstep, hasn't it? Whether we've liked it or not, it's been here for the last year. And obviously individuals have been in a position where it's been a case of, look, let's just cope the best we can. But now when we're looking at moving forward and this being and getting to the norm, it's an opportunity to take stock and clearly define how that's going to look for our businesses. So hopefully that's given you some tips on how to overcome some of those aspects.
Karen, as